Today, now after the lunch break, we have a different discussion than it's walk-in discussion, and so we'll probably start now. I want to introduce the panelists because they will be introducing themselves, but I'll introduce Bill Liao. He's the moderator of the discussion. So if you can please, panelists, come and walk on the treadmills. We have treadmills because the panel discussion is about longevity investments. And yes, I'm giving it away to Bill then.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Give us a moment to set up. This is a bit of a novelty for most of the people on this panel today.
I love it. Okay,
for me, I actually do all my meetings standing on a treadmill desk. And so I put in a lot of time every day on a treadmill, about 22,000 steps. And what I want to tell you all is balance is one of the keys to longevity as a human. One of the things that's been well characterized and proven is that if you want to slow your rate of aging down, the number one thing you can do is exercise. Now, this comes with a side effect. One of the things you can do to speed up your aging is get injured. So hopefully on today's panel, we will just do the exercising bit and none of the injury bit.
Bill, I'm amazed that you're going to be able to look at your notes there. I'm really focusing a lot on just...
I do this every day.
But you use like a thing which maybe has like a handle or...
No, never do that.
Huh. Okay.
I will say these treadmills are very narrow, so we could become a social media event very quickly. I am Bill Liao. My purpose in life is a world that works for all living things while civilization thrives. Part of civilization thriving and being able to cure environmental damage and all those things is having a civilization. And one of the more concerning things in the world is that in literally every country, birth rates are decelerating. So the number of humans, the growth in human population is decelerating. So this means that we have many, many aging populations. And one of the things about aging is it sucks. And we have very few ways of reversing it, until now. So part of my day job is I'm a general partner at SOSV. We're the highest volume life science investors in the world. And part of my work, also I'm chair of SENS Foundation, which is one of the longest running longevity research foundations in the world. And in addition to that, I'm also chair of Couture Fund, which is a fund investing in food as medicine. And so there has been, over the last 15 years, a major sea change in the way we view aging, in the amount of aging people there are, the size of the market, and the interventions. To give you an example, it's now possible to consider, given our massive awareness of biotech and our massive research, the possibility of reversing conditions of aging. So SENS Foundation did a piece of research where they discovered a molecule which can break a thing called 7-keto cholesterol. Now, you've never heard of 7-keto cholesterol, probably. But you've all heard of good cholesterol and you've heard of bad cholesterol, right? Well, it turns out you need both. If you deplete your body of bad cholesterol, you will die. So why then is it bad cholesterol? Well, it's bad cholesterol because when it gets rusty, yes, like a nail, it turns into this toxic substance called 7-keto cholesterol, which is at the heart of every plaque in every artery of every human around the planet. And SEN spent 10 years finding a molecule that's non-toxic that can go and grab that 7-keto cholesterol and break it in half. I'm very happy to say that that molecule is going into human clinical trials this year. And should it succeed, it will reverse arterial sclerosis. That means that it will stop most strokes, most heart attacks, and about 60% of all dementias. One single molecule will turn your arteries into the arteries of an 18-year-old, no matter what age you are. So there is an age reversal intervention that is going into clinical trials in humans this year. Now that was a non-profit spinning out a for-profit. Most of the research, Buck Institute, SENS Foundation, Lifespan.io, has been non-profit. But the results of that non-profit research are really interesting to pay attention to. Now, I'm introduced myself. I'm now just going to go down the line and have everybody introduce themselves. But I want you to be thinking about how can you make alpha out of this new megatrend? And it is a megatrend. And also think about how can you add one of these to your day? Because I tell you, 22,000 steps on a Zoom call really does help lower your blood sugars, make you thinner. It does some age reversal stuff. Please, Marc.
Yeah, welcome everybody. My name is Marc. I don't know if now it's on, perfect. I see I already have a few steps more. So I'm a serial tech entrepreneur. Started my first internet company right after college 25 years ago. And since then, built and exited several companies myself. I was always interested in being early in new and emerging fields. I got into Bitcoin in 2012, was heavily involved in this space. And following the whole developments in the field of longevity since roughly 15 years, and saw a little bit the shift from, I would say, more like futuristic kind of science fiction perspective of living forever or become immortal into something which is now really becoming tangible and true science. And with Maximon, we're a venture studio. We're building and financing companies in the field of longevity. We do the first 10 million ourselves and want to make the bridge from longevity research into real tangible products. We're based out of Switzerland, launched 5 companies with roughly 80 people so far. Yeah, and great to be on this panel and in this a little bit unique setup. So thanks for this cool idea, Bill.
Thank you. You're very welcome. We'll see how we survive.
Yeah,
Please.
I'm feeling a little winded already. I know,
Yeah,
it
people
looks
are
like
saying they're going to ask me a lot of questions so I could walk until I drop. But as I said, I do 22,000 steps a day, so good luck.
You'll be fine. I didn't train for this, but I know it's not that much. I feel it's very different walking here than just on the streets. I'm Amol Sarva. I'm from the US. My background is I'm a cognitive scientist. I did a PhD at Stanford, and then I left the field, actually, and started some companies. Some of them got kind of big. One of them was one of the large mobile phone businesses in the US, Virgin Mobile, which went public in 2007. And more recently, one of the world's largest prop tech companies, actually, Notel, flexible office company that got acquired in 2021. And a bunch of other companies over the years. I was an active angel investor, actually in one of the early deals that Bill did from SOSV, an electric bicycle company. And this last few years, we've been building a fund that we launched, and we've been investing now for the last couple of years, called LIFEX Ventures, Life Extension, on the idea that biology is moving faster and getting more computational, data and AI and software and enterprise software, and it might be possible now to build companies that look like just regular internet companies. Just the kind of companies we know from enterprise software and SaaS and all that. But to build them in a way that drives scientists forward, drives doctors forward, makes new and different innovations faster, and makes them more accessible. And I think the most tangible impact of that is life extension, it's longevity. We invest a little bit in a specific area, which we'll find out. It's not just for the moonshots of age reversal, but certainly this is a big, exciting theme for us. We think it's changing the whole world.
Stephanie.
Hi. My name is Stephanie Dainow. I am the executive director of Lifespan.io. I'm also a board member for that organization. As Bill mentioned, it's a nonprofit advocacy foundation, and we're well known for having one of the most well-known ethical news outlets. So that means we have a pulse on the entire industry. We also have an investor network to connect longevity startups with investors. But effectively, we are media. We are amplifying all of the information that comes out of the industry to the public. I am now also the Chief Business Officer of SENS Research Foundation. Maybe a week and a half ago, we announced our plans to merge, which is very exciting. And as Bill mentioned, SENS is a research institute with our media and our outreach components. We're about to do some really big things. If you have ideas or want to get in touch, please don't hesitate. My background really comes in media and entertainment for the sake of social causes. And what I realized is I didn't care about putting products in front of people's faces personally. I wanted to do more in the way of disruptive technology. And so I moved to Silicon Valley from New York to work at Singularity University, where we talk to Fortune 100 CEOs about the effects of exponential technologies and how to adopt them so you can target a moonshot, but in a way that's relatable so that your board and your stakeholders will actually align and be interested. So it's bringing that moonshot back to 5 years from now so you can all effectively talk the same language. I also had a startup in the longevity biotech space that was offered investment by Age One back in 2018. And so I'm really honored to be amongst this entire group. And something that you mentioned earlier, Mark, is that when an industry is really starting to emerge as something concrete, it is representative of two nonprofits that are merging when they're the pioneers. And when they come together, it means that it is a solidified industry. Usually people in the field say, oh, it's just a field, it's not a real industry. But after Bill explained what's going on with the startup that spun out of SENS, and we also have startups that spun out of Lifespan.io, this is a real opportunity to get involved, and I'm sure Alex can tell you more about that.
Alex.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Stephanie. So my name is Alex Colville. I'm the co-founder and general partner of Age One. So Age One, we're very focused on the biotech end of the longevity field. My co-founder, Laura Deming, built the very first venture capital fund focused on the theme of longevity back in 2011. It's notable because she was 16 years old at the time that she did it. She dropped out of MIT as a 16-year-old to build the fund and has kind of run it ever since. And Age One is, in essence, the next evolution of that. My background, unlike my co-founder, I'm not a child prodigy, but I'm a scientist, trained in the biology of aging, got my start in undergrad in David Sinclair's lab, one of the more well-known scientists in this field, and then did a PhD studying genetics at Stanford, specifically solely for the purpose of studying the biology of aging and trying to understand the mechanisms of why we age and how we can unlock interventions to give us 10, 20, 30 years of extra healthy lifespan. So after that, ran 3 family offices in terms of their biotech investment arms and cumulatively deployed about 130 million among those 3 funds. So at Age One, we're super focused on how we can get the first approved longevity drug in humans by the FDA. And beyond that, trying to catalyze a lot of these moonshots like Bill talked about. We're really, really excited about what can unlock bigger effect sizes moving in the future.
Yeah, and something like Cyclarity unlocking heart disease also unlocks a whole lot of other things. Because if you know you're not going to have a heart attack, you might exercise more or less, but you also cure a whole lot of dementias and a whole lot of other things. So each of these targeted interventions actually has a wider positive effect. It's a virtuous circle. Now, I just want to ask you, the audience, something, so you have to wake up and take your nose out of your phone for a second. Just put your hand up if you have any exposure to a longevity company already. Like you've invested in something. Yeah, put them up, just keep them up. There's a few hands up, that's great. Just to give everyone an idea of, who knows what they're doing. So I'm going to ask the first question to the entire panel. First to answer gets the longest time. But what actually does longevity mean to you all? Quick answers, please.
So I'd like to start by saying, a lot of people in the field and outside the field have said, you need to make sure there's a consensus on the definition of that word. And I've spent 2 years trying to figure out how to make that happen, and at the moment I don't think it's possible. So what I do recommend is that whenever you get in a conversation with someone about longevity, both of you have to preface with your own definition. to make sure that you're on the same page, or maybe you're on a different, which is interesting. For me personally, it's about reducing suffering that is associated with age-related disease. To others, it may mean more, it may mean less.
Yeah, maybe to add, that's why also a good starting point. I think there's still not really a predefined definition of the term longevity, so that's why everybody might have a different one, even being in the field, all of us here on stage. So for me personally, and also for our investment thesis, it's about increasing the quality of life. So not about immortality or living for 1,000 years, but expanding the human health span by increasing the quality of life of humans, especially in the older phase of your life.
Amol, you want to contribute there?
Avoiding death, I think, is pretty basic. So I think just not dying.
Live forever or die trying, right?
And I mean, I'm into immortality. I think that'd be great. It's just not practical right now. But I'm a supporter. And I think we should live well, absolutely. I mean, I don't think, you know, if you could avoid dying by living in a jar, that probably is not anybody's idea. But I mean, there's 5 ways that people die. There's just like 5 main ways. The heart attacks and strokes and neuro and cancer and infection. And working on those, I think, is the very, very practical, just straight ahead way of working on longevity.
One thing too, I'd say, just picking up on that, it's not just the way people die, it's how long people take to die. Like, you know, if you get heart disease, that is a long, miserable journey once you become symptomatic. And if you could reverse that, I think anyone with that condition would. And so, you know, there's a lot of misery to be saved. There's a lot of productivity also to be unleashed. For somebody who's been productive all their life, suddenly they switch to having heart disease and they're no longer productive, or they find it very difficult. To be able to reverse that condition is a game changer for them, but also everyone around them. Alex.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, you're saying.
What is longevity?
What is longevity?
To you.
To me. So, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with the rest of the panel. And maybe, like, to me personally, the part I focus on is the fact that, like, you can be a marathon running nun who never drinks or smokes a day in your life, and you could still get cancer or cardiovascular disease or dementia at the age of 60 years old. And that, to me, just seems wrong and messed up and not optimized. And it's just so obvious to me that one of the biggest market pulls in the history of the planet is going to be that people don't want that to be the reality. And to do that, we're going to need interventions that can give us all a chance to increase our healthy lifespan and not have to deal with all these awful age-related diseases as we currently accept them now. So that, to me, is my little bubble of the longevity field, which is longevity biotech, really interventions focused.
So following on that question, Marc, where's the line between, like, longevity and just health and wellness? Like, you know, a lot of people may be thinking, well, this is just medicine. Where's the line, do you think?
Yeah, I think, again, there's not a clear separation and definition, especially now as longevity is becoming a broader perceived topic. I mean, naturally, as soon as it moves or anything moves into a hardly regulated space, meaning FDA approvals, biotech kind of approaches, I think by definition it needs a lot of time and a lot of money. So it's a different approach than maybe just changing some of your lifestyles, which are still, in most cases, by far the most efficient ways to optimize your health span. So without spending any money, you can even literally by eating less and saving money, increase your health span. So that's why it's a little bit a blurry line, and I think that's also fascinating how we can somehow even today already make these available scientific-backed products and services somehow which is on the one side measurable, but also scientifically backed, that you can really then have an impact on the aging of humans. And that's why I think it starts with some kind of wellness related to longevity. As we heard, the definitions are also quite broad. And then on the other side, you have the hardcore biotech stuff, which is ultimately, again, if you could cure cancer, for example, that's a philosophical discussion. Is this now longevity, or is it just preventing a disease? So that's why, again, it's very difficult to find a clear separation. But for me, everything which is somehow measurably and scientifically helping humans to increase the health span is, in my view, longevity.
And Amol, you know, like, why are we talking about this now? Like, what's suddenly brought this into the zeitgeist? Like, what's changed?
Yeah, because I mean, if you just say it's health and wellness, it's boring. You wouldn't, why would you, you know? I think people are saying longevity because something has changed. And it's, one part, biology has just gotten way better. We've discovered tons of stuff. And to the casual observer, it feels like, you know, there's a Nobel Prize every few years about some esoteric thing, but it's like half the biology Nobel Prizes in the last 12 or so years are directly related to some of the phenomena that are very powerful tools in cellular biology or in systems, things like autophagy, and CRISPR is certainly very important. We're just discovering a lot of stuff. We can intervene on a lot of stuff. We can measure a lot of stuff. In the last 25 years, we've now come up with ways not just to sequence everybody's genome, but to do it every day if you want, to do the tumor every week to watch its growth and see how it's mutating, to do it at the cellular level, not just at the holistic level. And it's not the only genome, proteome, biome, all these omics. There's so many different kinds of data that are churning out of all these machines that we've built. And all this data is now being stored, and we have big data for biology, and now we have these big new AI models. I mean, the advances at the cellular levels of biology are amazing. We're discovering how to reverse aging cells and make them younger, but then we're now discovering how to simulate them and model them in pure AI systems, and then figure out how a drug, I mean, all of it's just moving so much faster. I think that's why areas that might sound like health, like cure cancer or detect it super early, are in a process of transformation, and why some of the moonshot kind of ideas of like a pill that reverses your biological age are plausible. They're actually plausible. They're not crazy. There's at least 20 companies, I think, that have some kind of compound that have raised 50 million or more that like might work, in my estimation. And in 10 years, one of those might work. Maybe 3 will work. It seems unlikely that 0 will work, just again on my estimation. But like we're in the hunt on something. And that, like that fountain of youth thing is like, it just feels really close.
And to the whole panel, what's an example, a concrete example of a longevity investment you've made that you're proud of and that you think is going to hit?
Yeah, I can start with that. You know, one of my favorite investments that already has hit to some extent is called Loyal. I mean, I think that's the other thing maybe I'll mention is like, I think maybe that's something else that's changed about the field. Laura, my co-founder at the Longevity Fund, she has 5 IPOs now investing in this field. So it's not a field that is like just going to start proving itself from a returns perspective. It already has. She's hit top decile returns in this field already without the breakthrough, you know, FDA-approved drug, which is coming. And on that note, I guess kind of one of my favorite investments has been Loyal, which is a company Laura incubated out of the fund that's working on increasing dog lifespan. And so this is a company founded in 2020, you know, in essence like a Oxford PhD dropout, very young 23-year-old founder who moved to San Francisco. Laura kind of brought her in and started co-working with her. And eventually they've built a company that as of 5 months ago got the FDA to sign off on giving them a green light for an efficacy early approval of their dog longevity drug. And so, you know, assuming they get a safety approval, there's going to be a lifespan drug approved for use by the FDA and commercialized next year. And it's a $5 billion per year market in dogs. And so it's insane. We're going to have our first longevity drug next year, knock on wood.
Anyone else?
That's an exciting one. That one's really cool. I mean, for us, since we do software and internet type companies, right, we've done 35 investments, and we're an early stage fund, so we'll put in 1 or 2 or 3 million into companies. We hide a little bit from straight up biotechs where the journey will be 10 or 50 or 100 million. But we do look for these kind of high leverage things, right? So just 2 quick examples that are European examples, since the group here is European. One of them is it's software that predicts heart attacks. So it's an AI that can work on a smartphone. It hits the cloud, takes a picture of someone's cardiogram. 99.9% of doctors are worse than this app. And this app is even better than the best cardiology juries. So it might be that the app is better than 100% of cardiologists. And not only does it diagnose 40 different conditions that you wish the guy in the back of the ambulance could diagnose for you, it'll actually predict heart attacks days in the future. something that your doctor wouldn't do. And that one, it's not reversing your cellular aging, but it is the #1 way people die. They die of heart attacks. And basically no one needs to, if you could predict them, right? A second one, which is interesting, is a Swiss company. And then we haven't announced the company yet, but you've heard about all the amazing new cancer treatments that involve taking some cells, growing some stuff, and giving those cells back to you after they've been edited. Well, these are amazing treatments. They cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. They take many weeks before the preparation of the implanted cells is made. There's just a huge amount of friction. It's so complex. A team of scientists basically makes for you a new implant that goes and takes over your body and fights the cancer. We've just done an investment in an automation platform, a desktop cellular generator that would let any hospital have the equipment to make that 90% faster right in your own hometown and 90% faster, cheaper, faster, closer. Another automation thing, right? So it's leveraging and building on the huge flow of invention in cell therapies.
And by the way, you can go and get an Actea blood pressure monitor in Switzerland right now. Like I'm wearing one right now on my wrist. This gives me real-time blood pressure information. I've got a glucose sensor on, so I get real-time glucose information. There's a whole lot of data that you can be collecting yourself right now. And by the way, if you're interested in a book about some of the things you can do immediately, I highly recommend a book called Outlive by Dr. Peter Actea. And if you can afford it, go to his clinic. Stephanie, I have a question for you. Why is this a megatrend, or is it not a megatrend?
I think it is, but I also think it depends on people that are in this room. The last question was, what are some interesting investments? I'm not going to talk about specifics, but I would like to point out that what was represented by the panel was a mixture of therapeutics, there's supplements, there's diagnostic platforms, there's wearables, there are infrastructure elements that need funding. The data and the AI models are only as good as the people that are training them and the amount of data and the quality of the data. So there are different areas across the entire ecosystem that you can focus on, even if it's not specifically longevity drugs, for example. Why do I think it's a mega trend? I want to point out that I think longevity has really kind of become more of a mainstream topic in the last 12 months especially, and some of the reasons for that are because, one, there's more money in the space, but absolutely not enough at all. Number two is the advocacy. So Lifespan.io for years has been not only putting out news, but the purpose of the nonprofit is to accelerate progress through visibility. And a lot of scientists don't communicate effectively about what they're doing, why they're doing it, the value of it. And so there are not that many translators. Because there aren't that many products, you don't have the business development and the marketing people in there that are making it shiny and sexy yet, but it's coming. Now, I think there's more so, it exists more so for the supplements and the things that are kind of near term versus the 10 to 20, 30-year therapeutics. But if you're interested in really getting into the space, it's a megatrend because it's not in a vacuum. Every part of every industry can somehow be framed to support longevity.
And Marc, where's the low-hanging fruit here? Is there a possibility even to make a VC bet in this space?
Yeah, I mean, we deliberately chosen to focus literally on these low-hanging fruits. So we, as a venture studio, always build companies where there's ideally a market as we speak today. So we do the boring stuff like supplements, clinics, so everything you can use and do already today. And maybe also going back to your question before, I mean, why is it a megatrend? I just think that there's a huge demand now from the end customer. I mean, if you read the news, it's still about the billionaires who want to live forever, and that's not untrue. But there are now many ways where you can literally, by, as I mentioned, sometimes even spending less money or by adding some additional money, maybe skip one drink at the bar, you can already invest in many scientifically proven ways, products and services to optimize your health span. And that's why I think we see many low-hanging fruits. Ultimately, I also believe in the moonshots. But I think there's a certain journey until we then have the first fully regulated drugs, or the longevity pill, how we sometimes call it. And in between, there are really many low-hanging fruits which become more and more visible. And you mentioned Peter Attia, Huberman, Sinclair. I mean, you have now more and more, let's call them scientists/influencers, who bring these topics to the broader masses. And I mean, ultimately, also at the event like that there's a panel, even in a special setup about the topic, shows a little bit that it's going definitely a little bit out of its niche and becoming more mainstream, and also because I think it's more tangible for everybody.
There's something I want to add, actually. You know, we've dug into why it's taking so long for this to become a mainstream topic, and if you think about it, the belief systems are really deeply rooted in generations. You know, you are raised in an environment where, whether it's religion or something else, you were born, you live, you age, and you die, and that is, you cannot change that. But if you also think about it, 20 years ago, we did not have the iPhone in our pocket. The mechanism that got us to the moon had less computing power than the phone in your hands right now. So with Moore's law, technology is advancing and it's converging. And the other thing that I remember from a panel this morning is that technology is going to trump politics. The innovators and the founders of these organizations are not going to stop. Even if there are regulations in the way, there are now special economic development zones popping up around the world. Longevity states, buildings with different lifestyles. They are finding loopholes and innovative ways to bring this to the public, to bring this to the mainstream. And with any kind of technology, the policies and the regulations kind of, they follow after. So follow the trends of the innovators. It's unstoppable.
Well, it's already rolling. I mean, Bill, you've let us go too long without talking about the GLP-1s.
Go for it.
I mean, the idea that we're talking about the future is a little bit absurd.
Yeah, it's not
because
the future anymore.
everyone knows about Ozempic and the related drugs that are called GLP-1s, these weight loss drugs. And if we had been talking 2 years ago, giving you this talk, and you had gone very seriously and gone searching for a drug that's coming around the corner that might address one of the most widespread and serious health problems.
And currently makes up half the GDP of the entire country of Denmark.
Yeah, you'd find that. I mean, it's the most valuable company in Europe, Novo Nordisk, and Lilly is now one of the most valuable pharmas in the world as well. And it's everywhere already, and it's just gotten started in the US. In some states, 2 to 3% of the population is already taking the GLP-1s.
Novo presented it at JP Morgan Health, and they have found that actual reimbursable population is 60% of the US is eligible for Ozempic under reimbursement. And they're only doing 3%, and they're already half the GDP of Denmark.
I mean, it'll be so much bigger, and that's not the only drug either.
Yeah.
I mean, you may think that there's a couple companies that have them all, but there's 10 more in pipeline. Some are already in very late stage trials. Those are already public companies that are worth 5 billion or 10 billion. And then there's the whole next generation, the ones that help you with muscle and with other related. I mean, if we're just begun to scratch what's possible. It was only 2-3 years ago that we made a vaccine to fight COVID, and it went all around the world in a minute. And now these drugs are roaring around the world, and I can already see in the pipeline the next ones. And Alex is talking about the next ones coming soon. I mean, the change just from the weight loss drugs will be so enormous. But we haven't even conceptualized yet what the related ones will be around metabolic health and around muscle and around heart and cardiovascular.
And these companies probably weren't pitched to investors as longevity companies. And what we advise startups to do is make 2 different decks, one for your traditional biotech investors and one for investors that are already kind of aligned with whatever longevity means to them. And so, these drugs are not framed in the way that you would expect, but it really depends on what the need was for that respective founder.
By the way, I have a question for the audience I'm going to answer, which is, what's the realistic time frame? I think you've just heard we're already in it. Like, there are drugs already out there. There are therapies already out there. The time frame is now for some of these things to come to fruition. Another question that was asked is, do we have the resources to afford a population that can get older? And the answer is absolutely yes. There are 2 reasons for that. Firstly, as a population ages unhealthily, they consume much more resources than if they age healthily. So you actually, and it's orders of magnitude difference. So by making people healthier longer, you actually consume less resources. Also, there are some very interesting studies, and I'm an environmentalist, like I've planted 82 million trees and counting. I've looked at world resources. Aging is a problem for everything from climate change to resource consumption. If you look at it, there is a high correlation with people who have longer life expectancies, regardless of economic demographic, and environmental care. So there's a lot of good news on that side. And then we have one from Antoine, which I'm going to bring to everyone. Aside from drugs, have you found companies innovating in the field of healthy mind? It's an interesting one. I think it's a valid point. You know, do you want to be healthy but insane? No.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on that list of 5 ways you die, one of them is neuro.
Yeah.
And there's a whole family of mental health things that, similar to like diet and weight loss, et cetera, can help with neurodegenerative disorders. And then, of course, there are some direct interventions and treatments for it. Yeah, I mean, healthy mind is very important. Suicide in the US is one of the leading causes of death. It's probably number 6.
I think that everything will work better if you know how to manage your nervous system regulation, which is a newer topic that I think the younger generation is talking a lot about on social media platforms. And we don't even know the data associated with that yet. But it really, that is a core thing. As Bill mentioned, exercise, lack of sugar, good sleep, diet, and I think honestly, nervous system regulation is really high up there.
And Alex, you know what Stephanie does, right? Do you see a big role still for the non-profits in, you know, being at the cutting edge of this, and what other value they bring, like Lifespan and Sense?
It's absolutely massive. I mean, I think for the nonprofits, like they've really been the ones who have put the field on the map to some extent, right? They've really brought it to the masses. They've funded it to get it to the point of where it is now, where we're talking about that, you know, these things are realities today, as opposed to 10 or 20 years in the future. That was largely because of the nonprofits.
You're going to do panels next to me every time from now on.
And I've got an interesting question here. Maybe Mark, you can take that one. Like, you know, all the R&D and CapEx is very intensive and it's risky, like pharma. You know, but this is a new field. Is there more of a downside? Is there less of a downside? You know, and you know, I believe Alex has already spoken to the returns. So I think there's some great example of massive returns. But just the first part of that question.
Yeah, I would maybe turn it around. I mean, ultimately, I think longevity is, in my view, and that's why I, after 10 years in internet and 10 years in digital assets, decided to move deliberately as an entrepreneur and investor in this field. I think it will be the biggest industry we ever seen, because I hardly meet anybody who's not interested in living a healthier, happier, and longer life. So if you look from this perspective, I think the upside is massive. And yeah, like always, if you're early, you have snake oil, you have maybe some people selling a dream which is not a tangible one, so maybe then you call it the placebo effect. But ultimately, I think, and it's unrelated to compare it to traditional pharmaceutical business models, the demand is just massive. And that's why, for me, I mean, always being early means you have a certain risk and downside. But that's why we're maybe the ones here on the treadmill, because we're a little bit earlier than others. And I see especially the opportunities ahead of us.
We're hopefully none of us so far is on the sudden downside.
Maybe I could add a little bit more
Yeah,
just
please.
to quantify things.
Yeah.
I think, like, you know, Amol made really good points about GLP-1s and just what they've done to transform the European economy with Novo Nordisk. Novo is now more valuable than Tesla, which is insane to fathom and realize. And we've done calculations that, in essence, the first approved longevity drug would have a market size of about $150 to $200 billion per year globally, annually. And
It's bigger than any drug that's ever existed.
yeah, so GLP-1s are targeted to be about 50 to 75 billion per year. So we're talking 3 to 4x potentially the size of the GLP-1 market for the first approved aging drug. And there have been 0 shots on goal for this yet. No one's even tried to get this drug approved. So it's one of the biggest market mismatches in the world in terms of size. of the opportunity and how many people have even tried. And it's really feasible with the technology we have today. So that's what I'm excited about. If you were a pharma company and had just this one drug, you would be worth more than the top 3 big pharma companies in the world combined right now.
But imagine if you were actually taking the drug. Time is money. Everyone here knows that very well. And quality time is what you would effectively get as a result of it, right?
My angle is also adjacent and slightly different, and it's just a slightly, I mean, there's just other business models too, right? I mean, invent the drug, it's amazing. Take the example of the GLP-1s, you know, because there'll be these other drugs. Maybe that's one thing to chase, because there's so much potential there. But you also reshape the entire economy. Suddenly there are thousands of new folks working on new compounds. They need tools and software and interactions. Then people are losing weight. The food economy changes. Restaurants, retail starts changing. Insurance and health insurance and reimbursement and the way employers incentivize different behaviors. What happens to health clubs and gyms? And do you even need these in a world of a muscle pill that comes right after the GLP-1 pill, which is coming in the coming couple of years? Like, there are just so many ripples as you look across the opportunity space. Many of them are very investable, and some of them are just classical, you know, Silicon Valley type internet companies. Some of them are food and retail concepts. There's just a huge array of them. And I think that's part of why longevity as a word is, it's like an industry. It's just going to reshape real estate and cities and the way cars are designed. I mean, just everything.
I totally agree. I have a question here, which I'm going to, again, take. You know, somebody saying, oh, since, you know, generative AI and LLMs are going to automate all our work, why do we need all these extra years? And I actually also run a foundation that teaches kids how to code. It's called Coder Dojo. It's the largest code club for kids in the world. And generative AI has been the biggest quantum leap in getting kids to learn to code in my experience in my lifetime. Like, the time it takes a kid to make a meaningful piece of detailed code now that does something amazing to them has gone from 6 months to 6 days because of LLMs. Right, so there's been this quantum productivity and joy increase because of large language models. And if you're going to live healthily for another 50 or 100 years, yeah, you want AI at your side assisting you to reskill and upskill and change, you know, what you're doing. And as a final thing, you know, what can you do with that time? Hey, it's a big universe, and we have not explored very much of it.
Can I actually call something out? Maybe
Yeah.
there's a question about misconceptions, and that's actually one of the biggest. Maybe, you know, dictators will be immortal, or, you know, there's tons of them. But you don't know what you don't know, right? And I talked about the belief systems earlier. The expectation is you're born, you live, you suffer, you die. Everything is going to change, so you don't know what the opportunities will be. And there's scientific evidence to support some of these misconceptions as well.
It's weird though, Stephanie, isn't it, that there's this kind of like morose, slightly grim undertone to questions that you get. If you get up and start talking about longevity, you get people asking you like, hey, isn't death good? Like, why do you want to, surely everyone goes to sleep every night hoping to wake up the next morning. Surely it is the most widely held desire in the world. It's weird to feel those questions.
This world is a tough world. But what I will say is, first and foremost, think about your parents and the end of their lives. If they already passed or they're suffering now, do you have family members? Do you have friends? Most of them, if they used to be in good health, were excited about all the things that they could do. Honestly, it's really about the reduction of suffering for me in that context. But I will say it again, we don't know what we don't know. We didn't know the iPhone would exist. We didn't know that AI would come this quickly, and now there's discussion about, you know, AI safety. Everything changes, and it's going to continue to change more rapidly because of the convergence and the computing power increasing.
And there was a question actually about quantum AI. Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest problems we have is compute at the moment. That's an actual bottleneck. But quantum AI offers to be able to do a lot more compute in parallel. So you're just going to see acceleration in this space. And it's a trend that is moving fast and going to get faster. There is already an enormous amount of money being made. Beyond the wildest dreams I had when I joined as a founding board member of SENS 15 years ago, where no one imagined, 15 years ago, no one imagined that this was possible. And now suddenly we're seeing drug after drug. We're seeing intervention after intervention, and you're seeing people having, for the first time, conditions of age reversed. I think that's a pretty amazing future, and it's come at a timely point because, as I said at the very start, birth rates are decelerating in every country on Earth. Every country. So I think that's 40 minutes. I think we're kind of on time.
We
on time here? Thank you.